difficult thing to say that you can reset a relationship, you know, from the cheap seats. As you know more than most, it's tough, and it's getting tougher because of the way China is reacting at the moment.
It is, and what it requires is a lot of thought, a lot of policy input, being able to engage and being able to put forward a very clear, concise and constructive approach. And we didn't see that from the Leader of the Opposition. He has had 3 years to put together a policy that he will take to the election about how he will engage with China, how he will engage with the region and globally. Yet all we saw was some glib statements and some really condescending advice. And I think the Australian people will want a lot better than that. And I think if that's all he's got to show for 3 years, then he's got a hell of a lot of work to do between now and the next election. This is the most complex geostrategic environment we have been operating in since the Second World War. And yet all we got was just glib statements from the Leader of the Opposition. He is unprepared to be Prime Minister from my reading of what he said at the National Press Club today.
And I'm still waiting for the Labor Party to take all of their MPs off WeChat after the way the Prime Minister's account on WeChat was hijacked.
Well, Chris, when it comes to dealing with these difficult issues, you've got to be very firm in your policy stance. Now, we've been very clear that we do want dialogue and engagement with China, but we've also been clear that we will not compromise on our values in doing that. Now, did we hear that loud and clear from the Leader of the Opposition today? What would be his stance on these types of issues? We got nothing. And so I really think what we've seen, we've been dealing with a pandemic for the last 2 years, also dealing with the most complex geostrategic environment we've faced in a nation for decades. And yet, the Leader of the Opposition, as far as I can see, he's been focused on a makeover and nothing else, no policy development. And I think the Australian people are going to want to see a hell of a lot better.
Let's talk about this import tax that the British government looks to be applying as they overhaul their alcohol taxes. Now, we've made great gains in the free trade agreement with the UK, and you and I have spoken about it before, but you will lose all of that, I guess, you will lose that impetus, the gains you made with the UK agreement just from them charging us more. Is that the way you see it, and what sort of response have you got back from the British government?
Look, I've written to the British Chancellor, and I don't have a response yet, but I've also been working very closely with the Australian wine industry here as they also make representations as part of the proposed changes that the UK government have put forward. And they're also working very closely with the UK wine industry to see whether they can put a very strong case, and I think they do have a very strong case, to the UK government, while the proposed way forward they've put to reforming alcohol tax in the UK will be very detrimental to the wine industry, not only here in Australia, but also in the UK. And we'll continue to engage. I've raised this also with the UK Trade Minister. So we'll continue to make these representations, raised it with the UK High Commissioner here in Australia, and we'll keep working on it. Obviously, it's a domestic reform decision of the UK government, so we've got to understand that, but it means that we have to work holistically to try and make sure that the unique nature of the wine industry, both here in the UK, is understood. It is very hard for the wine industry to be able to regulate the amount of alcohol that goes into a bottle of wine. When it comes to red wine, for instance, the amount of sun that each year's crop gets, or vintage gets, basically determines ultimately the alcoholic content. So what we need is some allowance given to the wine industry in the way they go ahead with these reforms. Now, no final decision has been made, so we'll keep that strong advocacy going. We've seen in the last 12 months, and this is even before the FTA kicks in, a 33% increase in Australian wine exports to the UK. You know, British wine consumers are voting with their feet. They love our wine, and we want to be doing everything we can to continue to make it affordable for the British wine consumer, because ultimately, in the end, it will just be the British consumer that will pay more tax for Australian wine. And we think that the British consumer should be paying less tax for Australian wine, given it's the best wine in the world.
Hear, hear. I want to ask about the good news today, which is the fact that on the issue that I've been chasing over summer, which is the availability of AdBlue, which is the chemical ingredient required for diesel engines, you've got some good news for the trucking industry and for supply chains.
Absolutely. The deal we did with Incitec Pivot means that now we're getting 75% of the local production of AdBlue occurring here in Australia. So that's fantastic news. It also will be backed up and supported by the imports of AdBlue that we're continuing to pursue, and we've got some of those shipments are on their way. So what we've been able to do is very much shore up the supply of AdBlue here. And as we all found out in the lead up to Christmas, it's an incredibly important ingredient to go into diesel, especially for our transport sector. And so the government understood the problem, and this is what we've done right throughout the pandemic as we've dealt with these type of issues. We examined the problem, looked at it, worked out, okay, we can try and make sure that we increase domestic production. That's what we've done. We also went overseas to make sure that we could access supply over there. And we'll continue to take that very practical, common sense approach to dealing with these issues, like we have with all these issues that we've been confronted with during the pandemic.
And just quickly, how will you be spending your Australia Day tomorrow?
I'm going down to Warrnambool in my electorate. There's a great Australia Day event which will take place there, so very much looking forward to that. It's a great day on the calendar. Communities coming together, really celebrating everything that's great about our nation, and there are so many things that are great about our nation. So looking forward to that, and then it'll be in the car tomorrow afternoon on the road, because I've got cabinet meetings to attend on Thursday. So it'll be some lovely celebrating, and then it'll be back behind the wheel to get to some meetings that'll be taking place in Sydney on Thursday.
Back to business. All right, much appreciated. Happy Australia Day for tomorrow. Thank you, Dan Tehan.
Thanks, Chris.